Captain Jake Morgan stood on the bridge of his ship and looked out at the alien world below. The planet was huge and covered in silver cities that sparkled like diamonds. After 3 months of travel through space, they had finally reached the home of the Zephyrians. "Captain, we're getting a message from the surface," said Lieutenant Amy Ross from her station. "They want to talk." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. First contact with an alien race that was far more advanced than humans. The Zephyrians had technology that could destroy Earth in seconds, but they had agreed to meet and talk instead. "Put them on screen," Jake said. The main screen flickered and showed a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and large black eyes. The creature wore flowing robes that seemed to move like water. When it spoke, its voice was cold and formal. "I'm Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. You may dock your primitive vessel at Station 7. However, before any meeting can take place, you must follow our ancient laws." Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward from behind Jake. She was the team's expert on alien cultures and had studied everything they knew about the Zephyrians. "We understand, Ambassador. We're ready to follow your customs." The alien's large eyes seemed to study her through the screen. "Very well. Our laws are simple but absolute. All foreign beings must be scanned completely to ensure they carry no weapons or diseases. This scanning must be done in your natural state without any coverings or devices." Lisa felt her face grow hot. She had read about this law in the few reports they had, but hearing it said out loud made it real. The Zephyrians had no concept of privacy or modesty. To them, bodies were just biological machines to be examined. "The scanning will take place in our medical facility," the alien continued. "Our technicians will examine every part of your body with our advanced sensors. This has been our law for 10,000 years. No exceptions have ever been made." Jake saw the worry in Lisa's eyes. He knew this was hard for her, but they needed this alliance. Earth was still recovering from the last war, and the Zephyrians had resources that could help rebuild their world. "We accept your terms," Jake said firmly. "Dr. Carter will undergo your scanning procedure." Lisa looked at him with surprise. She had expected to volunteer herself, but hearing Jake speak for her made her feel both grateful and nervous. She was the obvious choice since she was the cultural expert, but that didn't make it easier. "Excellent," Ambassador Kethvar said. "Dock your ship and send the subject to Medical Bay 12. The procedure will begin immediately." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge in silence. Lisa stared at the blank screen, trying to prepare herself for what was coming. She had trained for this mission for 2 years, but nothing could really prepare someone for this. "Lisa," Jake said quietly, "are you sure about this? We could try to negotiate." "No," she said, shaking her head. "This is why I'm here. If we want to make peace with them, we have to show we trust them. Besides, it's just a medical scan, right? How bad could it be?" Jake wasn't convinced. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat, and his instincts told him something was wrong. The way the alien had spoken about humans like they were objects to be examined bothered him deeply. An hour later, their ship was docked at the massive alien station. Jake and Lisa walked through corridors that were too tall and too bright for human comfort. Everything was made of smooth metal that reflected their faces back at them in strange ways. The medical bay was enormous. It looked more like a factory than a hospital. Machines hummed and beeped along the walls, and the air smelled like chemicals and electricity. At least 20 Zephyrian technicians moved around the room preparing their equipment. "Subject will stand here," said one of the technicians, pointing to a raised platform in the center of the room. It was surrounded by scanning devices that looked like metal arms with glowing sensors on the ends. Lisa walked to the platform on shaky legs. The technicians watched her with the same interest they might show a lab rat. To them, she was just another alien specimen to be cataloged and filed away. "Remove all coverings and devices," the lead technician said in a bored voice. "Scanning will begin when subject is ready." Lisa's hands moved to her uniform jacket, then stopped. She looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at her. None of them seemed to understand why she was hesitating. To them, this was just routine. Jake stepped closer to the platform. "Is it necessary for all these technicians to be present?" he asked. "Standard procedure. the lead technician replied. All scans must be witnessed to ensure accuracy. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought about Earth, about her family, about all the people who were counting on this mission to succeed. She started to remove her jacket with trembling fingers, but something in Jake's expression stopped her. He wasn't looking at her with the cold curiosity of the aliens. His eyes were full of concern and something else she couldn't quite identify. It was the way someone looked at a person they cared about, not a specimen to be studied. That look changed everything. Jake watched Lisa's hands shake as she tried to remove her jacket. The cold, bright lights of the medical bay made everything feel harsh and unwelcoming. Around them, the Zephyrian technicians waited with their scanning devices, treating this like any other day at work. Wait, Jake said suddenly. All the alien eyes turned to look at him. I need to be present during this procedure. The lead technician's large black eyes blinked slowly. That is not permitted. Additional beings will interfere with the scanning results. No, you don't understand, Jake said, stepping closer to Lisa. Human biology doesn't work the same way as yours. We need emotional support for our bodies to function properly. Lisa looked at Jake with confusion. She had never heard of such a thing, but she could see he was trying to help her somehow. Ambassador Kethavar appeared in the doorway of the medical bay. His tall form moved like flowing water as he approached. What is the meaning of this delay? The human male claims his presence is necessary for accurate biological readings, the lead technician explained. Kethavar studied Jake with interest. Explain this requirement, Jake thought quickly. He knew he was making this up as he went, but he had to try something. Humans have something called psychological well-being. When we feel safe and protected, our bodies work better. When we feel afraid or alone, our biology changes. Stress hormones increase, immune systems weaken, heart rates become irregular. Fascinating, Kethavar said. You claim that emotions affect your physical state? Absolutely, Jake said with confidence he didn't feel. If you want accurate readings of Dr. Carter's biology, I need to stay with her. Otherwise, your scans will show the effects of fear and stress, not her normal state. Lisa began to understand what Jake was doing. He was trying to find a way to make this easier for her while giving the aliens what they wanted. She felt a warm feeling in her chest that had nothing to do with the bright lights. Very well, Kethavar said after a long pause. We will permit this. Emotional support. But you must not interfere with the scanning process. Jake nodded gratefully. Of course, I'll just stand where she can see me. The technicians resumed their preparations, adjusting their machines and checking their instruments. Lisa stood on the platform, still wearing her uniform but feeling slightly better, knowing Jake would be there. Remove coverings now, the lead technician said impatiently. Lisa looked at Jake and he gave her an encouraging nod. She began to unbutton her jacket, her fingers still shaking slightly. As she removed each piece of clothing, the technicians moved closer with their scanning devices. Jake positioned himself where Lisa could see his face. When she looked at him, he didn't look away or seem embarrassed. Instead, he looked directly into her eyes with a calm, steady expression that seemed to say, "You're safe. I'm here." The scanning began with a low humming sound. The mechanical arms moved around Lisa's body, their sensors glowing as they collected data. The technicians called out numbers and readings to each other in their strange language. Interesting, one of them said in English. The subject's stress hormones are much lower than expected. Another technician checked his instruments. Heart rate is steady. Immune system markers are strong. This is unusual for a being in an exposed state. Jake kept his eyes on Lisa's face, giving her something to focus on besides the cold machines and alien stares. When she started to look around nervously at the technicians, he would clear his throat softly to get her attention back. "Dr. Carter," he said quietly, "remember when you told me about your research on alien cultures? You said the key to understanding others was to see past the differences and find the common ground." Lisa nodded, grateful for something to think about besides her situation. "Yes, every species has basic needs and desires, even if they express them differently. That's right, Jake said. These technicians aren't trying to hurt you. They're just doing their job, trying to keep their people safe. They don't understand human modesty because they've never needed it. As Jake spoke, something strange happened. The more comfortable Lisa became, the more interested the technicians grew in their readings. They had never seen a subject remain so calm during scanning. Remarkable, the lead technician said, studying his instruments. The subject's biological markers are actually improving during the procedure. Immune function is increasing, neural activity is optimal. Ambassador Kethvar moved closer to observe. How is this possible? Jake realized he was witnessing something the Zephyrians had never seen before. It's because she feels protected and respected. When humans feel safe, our bodies work at their best. But she is exposed and vulnerable, Kethvar said, confusion clear in his voice. How can she feel safe? Because I'm here, Jake said simply. She knows I won't let anyone harm her. She knows I see her as a person, not just a body to be examined. The scanning continued for another 20 minutes. Throughout the process, Jake never looked away from Lisa's face. He spoke to her softly about their mission, about Earth, about anything that would keep her mind focused on something other than her vulnerable state. When the scanning finally ended, Lisa quickly put her clothes back on. The technicians were busy studying their data, amazed by the results they had gathered. These readings are unlike anything we have recorded, the lead technician reported to Kethvar. The subject's biology actually improved during exposure and examination. We have never seen this response in any species. Kethvar looked at Jake with new interest. You achieved this by simply being present? Not just present, Jake said. By showing her respect and protection when she was most vulnerable. By treating her like a person who matters, not just an object to be studied. Lisa finished buttoning her jacket and stepped down from the platform. She felt different somehow. Not just because the ordeal was over, but because of how Jake had handled it. He had found a way to preserve her dignity in an impossible situation. Thank you, she said quietly to Jake. He smiled at her. That's what partners do. We protect each other. Ambassador Kethvar overheard this exchange. The concept of partners was unfamiliar to his species, but he was beginning to understand that humans had social bonds that affected their biology in ways the Zephyrians had never considered. We must study this further, he announced. This emotional support may be important for future diplomatic procedures. Dr. Ben Taylor arrived at the medical bay 30 minutes after Lisa's scanning was complete. He was a psychologist who studied how different species behaved and thought. When he heard about what had happened during the scanning, he asked to meet with the Zephyrian scientists immediately. Ambassador Kethvar, Ben said as he entered the room where the aliens were still studying Lisa's scan results. I believe we've discovered something very important here today. Kethvar looked up from the data screens. Indeed, the human female's biological responses were completely unexpected. Her body actually became healthier during what should have been a stressful procedure. That's because of something we call protective bonding, Ben explained. Humans have evolved to feel safer and stronger when they know someone they trust is watching over them. Jake and Lisa joined the conversation. Lisa still felt a strange warmth when she looked at Jake, remembering how he had kept her calm during the scanning. There was something different about the way he had looked at her, something that made her feel valued and protected. Explain this bonding, demanded a new voice from the doorway. High Counselor Vexnara entered the room. She was even taller than the other Zephyrians, with silver markings on her blue skin that showed her high rank. Our scientists report impossible readings from your scanning procedure. Ben nodded respectfully. Counselor, humans are social creatures. We depend on each other not just for survival but for optimal health. When Captain Morgan stayed with Dr. Carter during her scanning, he activated her body's protection response. Protection response? Vexnara asked. Her stress hormones decreased, her immune system strengthened, and her heart rate stabilized, Ben continued. This happened because she felt safe and respected even in a vulnerable situation. Jake stepped forward. It's about dignity, Counselor. Dr. Carter wasn't just exposed physically during that scan. She was emotionally vulnerable too. When I stayed with her and maintained eye contact, I was telling her that she was still a person worthy of respect, not just a specimen to be examined. Vexnara studied the scan results on the screens around her. These biological improvements, they occurred simply because she felt respected? More than that, Lisa said, finding her voice. Captain Morgan didn't look away from me or act embarrassed. He didn't make me feel ashamed. Instead, he made me feel protected, like I was important to him as a person. The Zephyrian scientists exchanged glances. Their species had no concept of modesty or embarrassment. They had never considered that other beings might experience emotional distress during scanning procedures. Fascinating, Vexnara said slowly. How many species have we scanned over the centuries who might have experienced this? Distress? Probably most of them, Ben said gently. Many species have concepts of privacy and dignity. Your scanning procedure, while effective for security, likely caused psychological trauma for countless beings. Kethvar looked shocked. We have always wondered why some species became hostile after scanning. We assumed they were hiding something or planning to attack. They were probably just hurt and angry, Jake said. Imagine if someone forced you to do something that went against your deepest beliefs about personal dignity. You might become defensive too. Lisa walked over to one of the scanning machines and ran her hand along its cold metal surface. These machines are very advanced, but they only see the physical body. They can't detect emotional pain or damaged trust. But today was different, Ben pointed out. Today you saw a human body at its best because the human felt respected and protected. Captain Morgan found a way to preserve Dr. Carter's dignity even in an undignified situation. Vexnara turned to Jake with new interest. How did you know to do this? Is this a standard human diplomatic technique? Jake shook his head. No, ma'am. I couldn't stand to see Lisa suffer unnecessarily. She was brave enough to undergo your procedure for the sake of peace between our peoples. The least I could do was make it as easy as possible for her. You acted on instinct? Vexnara asked. I acted on caring, Jake corrected. When you care about someone, you want to protect them, especially when they're vulnerable. Lisa felt that warm feeling again when Jake said he cared about her. She had worked with him for months preparing for this mission, but she was seeing a side of him she had never noticed before. This caring caused the biological improvements we measured? One of the technicians asked. Absolutely, Ben confirmed. Humans are healthiest when they feel loved and protected. Dr. Carter's body responded to Captain Morgan's care by becoming stronger and more resilient. Vexnara was quiet for a long moment, studying the data and thinking about what she had learned. Finally, she spoke. We have been conducting scans for 10,000 years. In all that time, we have never seen results like these. You are telling us that other species have been suffering during our procedures? Likely, yes, Lisa said softly. But you didn't know. Your species doesn't experience shame or embarrassment, so you couldn't understand that others might. This is unacceptable, Vexnara declared. If our security procedures have been causing unnecessary pain, they must be changed immediately. Jake felt a surge of hope. Counselor, what if we could help you develop a new scanning protocol, one that maintains your security needs while respecting the dignity of other species? How would this work? Kethvar asked. Lisa stepped forward. We could create privacy screens, allow same-species attendance, provide emotional support during the procedure. The scanning could still be thorough, but it would be done with compassion. And the subjects would be healthier during scanning, giving you more accurate results, Ben added. When beings feel safe and respected, their bodies show their true, normal state. Vexnara looked around the room at her scientists and technicians. Begin developing new protocols immediately. Work with the humans to ensure we cause no unnecessary distress. As the Zephyrians began discussing technical details, Lisa found herself standing next to Jake. She looked up at him with gratitude and something else she was just beginning to recognize. Thank you, she said quietly. Not just for staying with me, but for the way you looked at me. You made me feel like I mattered. Jake smiled down at her. You do matter, Lisa. More than you know. In that moment, both of them realized that something had changed between them during the scanning procedure. What had started as professional cooperation had become something deeper. Jake's gentle protection and Lisa's brave trust had created a bond that neither of them had expected. The Zephyrians watched this interaction with fascination, beginning to understand that human relationships were far more complex and powerful than they had imagined. 3 weeks later, Jake and Lisa worked side by side in a specially designed laboratory aboard the Zephyrian station. They had been asked to help create new scanning procedures that would work for all species, not just the Zephyrians. The privacy screen goes here, Lisa said, pointing to her drawings. It blocks the view from unnecessary observers while still allowing the scanning equipment to work. Jake nodded and made notes on his tablet. And we'll have a support person from the same species present, someone who can provide emotional comfort during the procedure. High Counselor Vexnara entered the lab with several other Zephyrian officials. Over the past weeks, she had become very interested in human concepts of dignity and respect. "Show us your progress," she said. Lisa activated a holographic display that showed their new scanning room design. The basic security scanning remains the same, but we've added features to protect emotional well-being. Subjects can have a trusted companion present, privacy screens block unnecessary viewing, and the lighting has been made warmer and less harsh. Most importantly, Jake added, we've trained the technicians to explain each step of the process and ask permission before proceeding. This gives subjects a sense of control over what happens to them. One of the Zephyrian officials looked confused. But the subjects must comply regardless. Why does asking permission matter? Because it shows respect, Lisa explained. When you ask someone's permission, you're acknowledging that they are a person with rights and feelings, not just an object to be processed. Vexnara studied the holographic room carefully. And you believe this will work for other species as well? We've tested it with volunteers from 6 different species already, Jake said. Each time the subjects showed less stress and produced better biological readings. Dr. Ben Taylor joined them from another part of the lab. The psychological benefits are remarkable, Counselor. Subjects who feel respected and protected during scanning are 300% more likely to cooperate in future diplomatic meetings. 300%? Vexnara asked in surprise. When beings feel humiliated or violated, they remember that feeling, Ben explained. It affects all future interactions. But when they feel respected and cared for, they develop trust that makes diplomacy possible. Lisa looked at a data pad showing their test results. Counselor, we discovered something else important. Many of the species that refused to meet with Zephyrians in the past weren't being hostile. They were protecting themselves from what they saw as a traumatic experience. Jake pulled up historical records on the main screen. Look at the Andrali delegation from 40 years ago. They left abruptly after scanning and never returned. We contacted them last week. They said the procedure made them feel violated and worthless. They thought Zephyrians saw them as inferior beings. But we meant no disrespect, Kethvar said, entering the conversation. We were simply following our laws. Intent doesn't always matter, Lisa said gently. What matters is the impact of your actions on others. The Andrali felt disrespected, so that's what happened, regardless of what you intended. Vexnara was quiet for a long moment. How many potential allies have we lost because of our procedures? Based on our research, probably dozens of species, over the centuries, Jake said. But the good news is that most of them would be willing to try again if the procedures were changed. We're calling it the Morgan Protocol, Ben said with a smile. Jake looked surprised. You're naming it after me? You were the first to demonstrate that protection and dignity could be maintained even in vulnerable situations, Vexnara said. Your gentle approach with Dr. Carter showed us a different way of thinking about security and respect. Lisa felt that familiar warm feeling when she looked at Jake. Over the past 3 weeks, they had worked closely together, and she had seen his kindness and wisdom in action every day. What had started during the scanning procedure had grown into something deep and lasting. The real test will be implementation, Jake said modestly. Teaching technicians to think about emotions and dignity won't be easy. We have already begun. Training programs, Vexnara announced. All scanning personnel are learning about emotional support and cultural sensitivity. The changes will be mandatory within 60 days. A communication device chimed, and one of the technicians answered it. "Counselor, the Andrali delegation has arrived. They wish to be the first to test the new protocol." Everyone in the room felt excited and nervous. This would be the real test of their work. 2 hours later, they all stood in the new scanning room watching as an Andrali representative underwent the updated procedure. The being looked nervous at first, but relaxed when his companion was allowed to stay, and the technicians explained each step carefully. "How do you feel?" the lead technician asked, using the new communication protocols they had learned. "Respected," the Andrali replied with surprise. "I feel like you care about my comfort, not just your security needs." When the scanning was complete, the Andrali delegate turned to Vexnara with tears in his large eyes. "This is completely different from before. You have shown us that Zephyrians can be both strong and kind." Jake and Lisa watched from the observation area as the successful test concluded. They stood close together, their hands almost touching. "We did it," Lisa said softly. "We actually changed 10,000 years of tradition." "You did it," Jake corrected. "Your bravery in that first scanning made all of this possible. You showed them that vulnerability and strength could exist together." Lisa looked up at him with eyes full of gratitude and something deeper. "We both did it. You protected my dignity when I was most vulnerable. That changed everything." As they watched the Andrali delegate shake hands with Zephyrian officials in friendship, both Jake and Lisa realized that their own relationship had been transformed by the same principles they had taught the aliens. Trust, respect, protection, and care had created something beautiful between them. "Lisa," Jake said quietly, "when this mission is over, I hope we can continue working together." She smiled up at him. "I was hoping you'd say that." In the background, Vexnara was already making plans to contact other species that had avoided Zephyrian space for decades. The Morgan Protocol was about to change galactic diplomacy forever, all because one human refused to let another human face indignity alone. 6 months later, Ambassador Kate Walsh stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral station orbiting Kepler Forum 42b. Representatives from 47 different species filled the Great Assembly Hall, more than had ever gathered in one place before. "Today marks a historic moment," Kate announced from the central podium. "For the first time in galactic history, we have a universal protocol for diplomatic security that respects the dignity of all species." In the audience, Jake and Lisa sat with the human delegation. Jake wore his dress uniform with new diplomatic ribbons, while Lisa had been promoted to Chief of Xenobiological Relations. They watched with pride as species that had never met before worked together in harmony. "The Morgan Protocol," Kate continued, "has made it possible for species who avoided diplomatic contact for centuries to join our galactic community. Today, we welcome 12 new members to the Galactic Council." Applause filled the hall as representatives from species like the Andrali, the Corvani, and the Delthak took their seats for the first time. Many of them had avoided the Zephyrians for decades because of the old scanning procedures. High Counselor Vexnara rose from the Zephyrian section. "The Zephyrian Empire wishes to formally apologize to all species who suffered under our previous protocols. We did not understand that strength could be gentle, or that true security includes emotional safety." Jake squeezed Lisa's hand as they remembered that first day in the medical bay. What had started as a moment of human kindness had grown into something that changed the entire galaxy. "We have learned," Vexnara continued, "that the most advanced civilizations are measured not by their technology, but by how they treat others in vulnerable moments." Admiral Rick Stone, the military leader who had helped implement the new protocols across all human ships, leaned over to Jake. "The Morgan Protocol is now standard procedure on every human vessel and allied station. We've trained over 10,000 personnel in the past 6 months." Dr. Ben Taylor, who had been studying the psychological effects of the new procedures, added his own report. "Species that undergo the respectful scanning process are 400% more likely to form lasting diplomatic alliances. Trust, it turns out, is the foundation of all successful relationships." As the formal ceremonies continued, Jake and Lisa stepped out onto an observation deck that looked out at the stars. Through the transparent walls, they could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station. It was a sight that would have been impossible just a year ago. "Remember when you asked me if I was sure about undergoing the scanning?" Lisa said, looking up at the stars. Jake smiled. "You said, how bad could it be? I don't think either of us expected it to change galactic history." "It wasn't the scanning that changed everything," Lisa said softly. "It was the way you looked at me. The way you made me feel protected and valued when I was most vulnerable." They stood close together, watching ships from species that had been enemies for centuries now working side by side on joint missions. The Zephyrians were sharing their advanced technology, while other species contributed their own knowledge and resources. Captain Morgan and Dr. Carter, a familiar voice called behind them. They turned to see Ambassador Kethvar approaching with a datapad in his hands. "Ambassador," Jake said warmly. Over the months, the formal Zephyrian had become a friend. "I have a message for you," Kethvar said. "It is from the Androli High Council. They wish to name their new diplomatic academy after Captain Morgan, in honor of the human who taught the galaxy about dignity and vulnerability." Lisa felt tears in her eyes. "Jake, do you realize what you've done? Your simple act of kindness has created a new standard for how civilized beings treat each other. We did it together," Jake said, putting his arm around her. "Your courage and my protection working as partners." Kethvar observed their interaction with the fascination his species had developed for human emotional bonds. "I have studied your species for months now, and I believe I finally understand what makes humans unique in the galaxy." "What's that?" Lisa asked. "You see strength in gentleness and power in protection. Most species believe that showing care makes them weak. Humans have proven that caring for others actually makes everyone stronger." As if to prove his point, a group of young beings from different species ran past them, playing together while their parents attended the council meetings. These children would grow up in a galaxy where dignity and respect were universal values, not just human ones. "Look at that," Jake said, watching the children. "They don't even know that their species used to be afraid of each other." "That's the real victory," Lisa agreed. "Not just the treaties and alliances, but the fact that future generations will grow up believing that treating others with respect is normal." Admiral Stone joined them on the observation deck. "I just got word from Earth. The President wants to establish permanent diplomatic training centers based on the Morgan Protocol. We're going to teach other species not just our technology, but our values of dignity and care. And other species are teaching us too," Ben Taylor added, arriving with more good news. "The Zephyrians are sharing their medical advances. The Andrali are helping us understand long-distance communication, and the Corvani have agricultural techniques that could end hunger on dozens of worlds." Jake and Lisa looked out at the busy space station, where beings who had once been strangers or enemies now worked together as partners. Supply ships brought resources from one species to help another. Scientists shared research that benefited everyone. Children played together while their parents built a better future. "You know what the best part is?" Lisa said, leaning against Jake's shoulder. "What's that?" 6 months ago, you looked at me with such gentleness and respect that it changed how I saw myself. Today, beings all across the galaxy are looking at each other the same way." Jake turned to face her fully. "Lisa, I've been wanting to ask you something." "What?" "When our mission here is complete, would you consider staying partners? Not just for work, but for everything?" Lisa's smile lit up her entire face. "I thought you'd never ask." As Jake and Lisa embraced, the stars seemed to shine brighter around them. In medical bays throughout the galaxy, beings were undergoing security scanning with dignity and respect. In diplomatic meetings, species were forming alliances based on trust rather than fear. And in training centers across dozens of worlds, future diplomats were learning that true strength came from protecting others, especially when they were most vulnerable. The Morgan Protocol had become more than just a procedure. It had become a symbol of what was possible when beings chose to treat each other with kindness and respect. And it all started with one human who refused to let another human face indignity alone. "What do you think our next assignment will be?" Lisa asked as they walked back toward the council chambers. "I don't know," Jake said with a smile. "But whatever it is, we'll face it together." Hand in hand, they returned to the assembly hall where species from across the galaxy continued building, a future based on the simple human understanding that everyone deserved to be treated with dignity, especially in their most vulnerable moments.